Hello friends, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Jaideep Shorangi, Jogesh Chandra Chaudhary College, University of Calcutta, Kolkata. Today we are going to learn about Module 20, which focuses on William Shakespeare as a sonnet is written by Dr. Kalyani Dikshit. Kalyani Dikshit teaches English at Dayanand Anglo-Vedic PG College in Lucknow, UP. Friends, I think all of you are aware of William Shakespeare as a dramatist, but today we will learn William Shakespeare as a sonneteer, a premier sonneteer during the age of Elizabeth. William Shakespeare's sonnets on love, rival poet, and also sonnets on Dark Lady and Mr. W.H. He also talks about a fair youth. There are sonnets on time and death as well. So, in a nutshell, we are going to analyze Shakespeare as a sonneteer with available parameters and conditions. Friends, let us discuss something about Shakespeare in general as a sonneteer. His sonnets are characteristic documents of fears, hopes, relationships, love, feelings, and strong sentiments of the mind. His sonnets are short personal poems containing a rich content within. Almost all of these sonnets are written in form of 3 quarters followed by a couplet. I hope you are aware of quartets. Quartets comprises with 4 lines. So 4, 4, 4, 12 plus 2 lines as couplet, that means 14 lines. Such form was popularly known as Shakespearean sonnet. Shakespeare composed 154 sonnets. We can broadly categorize his sonnets into 3 separate groups. The first group falls 1 to 126, and this is addressed to a fair youth. The second group contains only 9 sonnets, 78 to 86, and these sonnets are addressed to a rival poet. And group C, or the last group of sonnets, contains 28 sonnets ranging from 127 to 154. And these sonnets are addressed to a dark lady. A close and minute study of William Shakespeare's sonnets gives us a list of groups of containing sonnets addressed to time, Cupid, the god of love. In some of his sonnets, he reflects death, physical union, and the soul of man. Critics believe that Mr. W.H. is the Earl of Southampton. His full name is Henry Wriothesley. There are debate regarding the identification of Mr. W.H. He was also the literary patron of William Shakespeare. A.L. Rousey, eminent historian, claimed Southampton as Mr. W.H. Dover Wilson was the supporter of Pembroke. That means Mr. W.H. was the Earl of Pembroke. The full name of the third Earl of Pembroke was William Herbert, and William Herbert abbreviated into W.H. Fleary and Massey have accepted William Herbert as Mr. W.H. William Herbert was the literary agent. So critics are on rival camps to give name of Mr. W.H. and to find out the identity of this fair youth. Friends, let us talk about sonnets addressed to Mr. W.H. Sonnets 1 to 25 are adoration of love. A close study reveals that the theme of first 17 sonnets is marriage. It seems that the poet is trying to urge a fair youth to marry and produce children. This way, this beauty or his beauty will be carried on into the next generation, because we all know time has the last laugh. So unless we go into procreation, our life will be stopped. So according to Shakespeare, only creation or going into the next generation is a step that can surpass time. In Sonnet 3, he tries to persuade the fair youth to marry and procreate. Sonnets addressed to Mr. W.H. In Sonnet 8, marriage has been compared with three stringed musical instruments where father, mother and son create a sweet pleasing note. The fair youth does not want to leave a widow behind him, but if he dies without producing a son, everyone will weep, because he has not left a pattern of beauty in this world. Sonnet 34 again reflects the poet's mood of complaint. But like a royal as well as loyal friend, he forgives his friend. With a huge heart, the poet excuses the ill deeds of the fair friend. Sonnet 33 to 36 are explained in terms of physical contacts. The fair friend is locked up and treasured in Shakespeare's heart. In Sonnet 54, he praises his friend's beauty along with the inward truth. Sonnet 55 seems to be based on Horace's Odes 3 and 30. Sonnets addressed to Mr. W.H. continues as he sees all nature's beauty in the face of his friend. This is a departure that previously the women faces were considered as the objects of beauty. Now the face of Mr. W.H., a male face, has been considered as an object of beauty. The fair youth has also been portrayed as disloyal person whose smell does not match his appearance. For the poet, love is the food and hunger as well. Love is as necessary as food for life. He loves his friend as miser loves his money. He is ready to disgrace himself knowing the will of Mr. W.H. He is ready to become a stranger for the wishes of his dear friend. He requests his friend to desert him if he intends to do so. If he is going to leave him, he should not wait till the end. The possession of fair youth is far more precious than any other material pursuit of the poet. In sonnet number 92, 93, 94, 95 and 96, he accuses his friend in an ironical tone. In spite of all shortcomings and faults, he loves his friend a lot. It is not easy for him to bid emotional farewell to his dear friend. He shows his creative power on three themes: beauty, kindness and faithfulness. These three things are found in only one person, who is this fair friend. Nothing can control the lease of his true love. Even time and death cannot crush this love. His friend is the entire world to Mr. Shakespeare, as we come across in sonnet number 112, "You are all my world," unquote. No one else is as important as himself. None else to me, nor I to none alive. 112 line 7. The poet is so deeply absorbed into the thoughts of his friend that he cannot see and admire any other object in the world but the physical beauty and the mind of the friend. In every object he sees the reflection of his friend. Even though his visions are poisoned by delusions, he is ready to drink such sweet poison, and for the cause of his friend only. In sonnet 118, he admits that he is so lovesick over his friend. Both these friends gave him each other a notebook to record the experiences and memories shared together. But the poet rejects the book of his friend, saying that he doesn't need any book to remember how much he loves his friend. He offers his pure love to his friend, that is not mixed with seconds knows no art. So his love is artless. In a grammarless world of love, in the last sonnet 126, he calls him lovely boy, and it is a time's darling. He warns his friend to be beautiful in time's destructive power. Friends, possibly by now you have understood the relationship between Shakespeare, the author, poet, sonneteer, and Mr. W.H. Now let us move on to sonnets addressed to the rival poet. Only 9 sonnets are addressed to a rival poet in a collection of 154 sonnets. In sonnet 21, the poet hints at the presence of a rival poet for the first time. The rival poet appears as that muse who used too much of false statements, hyperboles, ornamental language to portray the beauty that shows his lack of sincerity and genuinity in love. But the fair praises of Shakespeare exhibit in his true love. His sense of competition and feelings arising from the sense of envious import in the sonnet number 79. Here he says that the rival poet is doing nothing new. Whatever he writes about the youth and about the ideas stolen from fair youth himself. The rival poet learned the word virtuous from his behavior, beauty from his face, and praises what he finds him already. He criticizes the rival poet for using so much ornamental language that makes his writing look artificial. He also criticizes the youth for liking his false praise. A true lover never speaks too much. In the same way, he remains mute in false praise. He asks the fair friend to respect the rival poets for their words of appreciation and praise, and to respect him for his silent and dumb thoughts. I think good thoughts whilst other good words, unquote. He calls his rival poet well-refined pain and finds himself tongue-tied. Friend, after learning about the rival poet, let us switch over to another important part of Shakespeare's sonnets, sonnets addressed to the dark lady. Critics are divided into rival camps again to identify who the real dark lady is. Critics believe that the dark lady is the worser spirit. F.E. Halliday in Shakespeare's Companion writes about dark lady in this way: it seems reasonable to identify her with the mistress stolen from Shakespeare by his friend, unquote. Thomas Tyler first suggested Mary Fitton can be the real identity of the dark lady, and Mary Fitton is Pembroke's mistress. Ivor Brown thinks she was Annie Waterley. Perhaps Rosaline is a clue. Rosaline of Romeo and Juliet and of Love's Labour's Lost, both black beauties. You can see H. Wilby's attitude to the dark lady. Now friends, as we have already categorized a host of sonnets addressed to the dark lady, the first sentence or the first sonnet that we come across in the sequence addressed to the dark lady is sonnet number 127. Here he praises her dark complexion and dark eyes, and the dark lady is playing piano with her tender fingers, and the poet feels envious. The poet groans for the love of the dark lady for 1,000 times. According to him, the black is the fairest. The poet curses her for making his friend her slave. He seems to be hurt a lot by her faithlessness and cruelty. She is portrayed as a politeless lady who keeps hurting the poet. He admits that he loves her with his heart. In Sonnet 142, he confesses that he has also cheated many people just like the dark lady. But if you compare the appreciation we receive regarding in praise of Mr. W.H., so it's subjective contrast between the poems or sonnets addressed to dark lady and sonnets addressed to Mr. W.H. Now friends, another important aspect of Shakespeare's sonnets is the element of time or the theme of time. Sonnet 12 portrays the power of time, the destructive power of time, power without any mercy. All physical things are bound to be decayed. There are some critics who believe that Shakespeare was concerned with carpe diem motive. We have had enough attention regarding the carpe diem motive so far. But in Sonnet 116, he establishes the power of love that transcends the limitations of time. In sonnet number 63, he addresses time as injurious. But unlike sonnet 60, this sonnet ends with a depressing mood and tone, and that sets the contrast. In sonnet 126, the poet refers to the power of time again. In spite of the blessings of nature, he should fear time's destructive power altogether. Friends, after the role of time, now talk about death. If we are physically shaped, there is death on the card, and Shakespeare writes about death in his sonnets. Sonnet 13 revolves around the theme of death. The poet again says that death will vanquish the fair youth's beauty. In sonnet number 71, 72, 73 and 74, he anticipates his own death, the last biological experience that one can experience. He suggests that the fair youth not to mourn over his death. Death cannot take away the memories with fair youth. He writes, "My verse will become your tender monument. My pain has such virtue, it will make you immortal." Sonnet number 146 portrays death as something that feeds on men and Sheol as the winner. Friends, there is another issue that we come across in Shakespeare's sonnets, that is the pangs of separation from the fair youth. Shakespeare always suffered from uncertainty that there will be a moment when he will be separated from his fair youth. From sonnet 26 onwards, we find the poet suffering from the pangs of separation. The distance between the poet and the fair youth is the chief cause of this pain. In sonnet 27 again, the restless poet is unable to sleep because of the imagination that he will be separated from his friend. During the daytime, his sorrows become longer, and night the grief becomes stronger. Sonnet 37 and 126 give us some more hints about this particular dimension. Sonnet 40, 41 and 42 tell us that the fair youth takes over and miseries follow and haunt the poet. In sonnet number 133 to 136, again the problem has been discussed elaborately with poetic images. In sonnet number 40, he expresses his feelings for fair friends' ill deeds. Now friends, there is another aspect that we really cannot ignore in Shakespeare's sonnets, that is the elements of nature. As you know, all poets in the world are part of nature. When they write about nature. Shakespeare is not an exception. In sonnet 44, Shakespeare talks about heavy elements like earth, water, whereas in 45 he refers to light elements like slight air, purging fire. In sonnet 44, the poet seems disturbed at the distance from the fair youth. He imagines that his body will be made only with thoughts, then he would have crossed the boundaries of distance and can reunite with the fair youth. But in Sonnet 45 carries and continues the concept of two remaining elements, fire and air. Friends, as in this module possibly you have located that we have situated William Shakespeare in the Elizabethan context. We have tried to trace out the contribution of William Shakespeare as a sonneteer. We have discussed at length on different categories of sonnets he has written. He has penned sonnets praising Mr. W.H. He has penned sonnets addressing Mr. Earl of Pembroke or Earl of Southampton, whoever it may be. There are some sonnets addressed to the Dark Lady, whose identity has been examined closely. At the same time, there are sonnets on time, death and nature. So we have presented before you a bouquet of sonnets as written and recorded by William Shakespeare, and his 154 sonnets are really reading wonder. Thank you.
Shakespeare's Sonnets, an introduction. Shakespeare's extraordinary collection of 154 sonnets comprises one of the great glories of world literature, and yet, as with many other aspects of their author's life and work, much mystery surrounds them. They were first published in London in 1609 in a folio which contained not just the sonnets, but also the long poem A Lover's Complaint. Shakespeare was by then in his mid-40s and had already written most of the plays which had made him famous, but we know that more than 10 years earlier he was circulating sugared sonnets among his private friends, and it is therefore reasonable to assume that the bulk of the sonnets were written during the 1590s. There were several serious outbreaks of plague in London during this period, and it is likely that Shakespeare took advantage of the free time resulting from the enforced closure of the theatres to work on his verse. The folio is dedicated to Mr. W.H., and literary scholars have propounded many theories as to the likely identity of the dedicatee, including William Herbert, the Earl of Pembroke, one William Hall, who had worked with the printer of the folio, and even the author William himself. There is, however, no general agreement, and we are unlikely ever to know for certain. The 154 sonnets fall clearly into three groups. The first 126 are addressed to a young man, sometimes known as the fair youth, and perhaps to be identified with W.H., and these often have a strong homoerotic undertow. They deal with love in all its aspects, initially urging the youth to marry and ensure his immortality through procreation, and later praising the power of poetry and love to ensure another kind of victory over death. In sonnets 127 to 152, the focus shifts to the poet's seductive but faithless mistress, often referred to as the Dark Lady of the sonnets, her darkness being clearly both physical and spiritual. These are of a more openly erotic character, and, as with the fair youth, many attempts have been made to identify her with a specific individual of Shakespeare's acquaintance. The final pair, numbers 153 and 154, deal with the god Cupid, and form a natural link to A Lover's Complaint, which followed them in the first folio. The structure of Shakespeare's sonnets almost invariably follows the classic English sonnet format. 14 lines in all, each line having 10 syllables. These lines are divided into 3 groups of 4 with alternating rhymes: A-B, A-B, C-D, C-D, E-F, E-F, and a final rhyming couplet, G-G. To use a musical metaphor, the opening 4 lines state the theme, the middle 4 develop the ideas, the third draw these ideas together, and the final 2 form a coda, or conclusion. The linking theme of love which runs through the sonnets enables Shakespeare to explore and meditate on the profoundest aspects of human relationships and experience, from overwhelming passion through doubt, fear, regret, jealousy and betrayal, to the transitory nature of life itself. This, it can be argued, is the only mystery which ultimately concerns us, and through Shakespeare's timeless verse, as resonant today as when written 4 centuries ago, we can each be helped towards a greater understanding of the human heart.